They thought they were following the ritual. They thought the sacrifice was right. But the wrong blood calls the wrong thing, and once it comes, it doesn't leave. This story was nearly lost until someone whispered it to the flames. Pull up a log. Take a seat. Let the dark settle in, because once the fire starts speaking, it doesn't stop. Some say the stories it remembers are just legends. Others say they happen exactly this way. But you'll have to decide for yourself. Welcome to Campfire Invocations. This series shares real confessions pulled from the depths of Reddit, first-hand accounts of rituals, witchcraft, and dark magic that the posters swear actually happened. Tonight's chapter is called Blood Was the Wrong Offering, because when the wrong blood spills, the right thing never comes. The wrong drop. When my aunt died, she left me her farmhouse and the warning to never go in the cellar. The first week I ignored it because the cellar door was padlocked from the outside. Then I found the key. Inside was a table covered in jars of dried plants, bones, candles, all dusty, untouched for years. In the center was a stone bowl carved with symbols that made my head ache if I stared too long. There was also a letter. It read, "For when the sickness comes again. 3 drops from the bloodline. Only from the bloodline." 2 weeks later, my dog fell ill. Wouldn't eat, barely moved. Desperate, I thought maybe the old ritual could help. I didn't understand the instructions, but I figured blood was blood. I pricked my finger. 3 drops into the bowl. Lit the candles. Whispered the words scratched into the underside of the letter. The air went heavy. The shadows on the wall grew. Thicker, my dog whimpered, then stilled. I thought it had worked, until I noticed the hair on its body moving, like wind under fur. Then something crawled out of its mouth. It wasn't my dog's tongue. It was a long, wet, black hand. The thing pulled itself out, all bone, sinew, and wrongness, and it looked straight at me. It said my name perfectly on the first try. Then it laughed. I found my aunt's real ritual instructions later, hidden under the false ones. It wasn't meant to heal. It was meant to seal something away. And I'd given it the wrong blood. Mine. If you found that bowl, would you have poured your own blood in, or walked away? Tell the fire below. The wrong brother. When my grandmother died, she left my older brother and me her house and something else. A locked cedar chest with a note taped to it in her shaky handwriting. Only open if one of you is dying. Use the one who is not. We laughed about it at first, thought it was some creepy family joke. We shoved the chest into the attic and forgot about it. 2 years later, my brother was diagnosed with leukemia. Chemo didn't work. Transplants failed. He was wasting away in front of me. That's when I remembered the chest. We brought it down to his bedroom. The lock was rusted, but it clicked open like it had been waiting. Inside were ritual tools, a clay bowl, 3 candles, a silver knife, and a small book wrapped in faded red cloth. The pages were brittle, handwritten our grandmother's looping script. The ritual was simple. Blood from the healthy sibling spilled into the bowl while chanting a name. Then the sick one drinks from it. According to the notes, the illness would be carried away. I didn't hesitate. We lit the candles, drew the circle, and I cut my palm. My blood pooled into the bowl as my brother whispered the name over and over. He drank it. Almost instantly, the color came back to his face. His eyes cleared. His breathing steadied. It was like watching a ghost return to its body. We cried, hugged, thanked our grandmother out loud. That night, I woke to the sound of him screaming. When I burst into his room, he was on the floor, clutching his chest. His skin was boiling hot. His veins looked black under his skin, and his mouth, his teeth were too long. He grabbed my arm and hissed a word I didn't understand, but it burned in my ears like it was alive. By morning, he was gone. No sign of a struggle, just an open window and the smell of iron. I found the ritual book on the floor. There was one page we hadn't seen before. It was stuck to the back cover. It read, "The wrong blood calls the wrong master," and the master always takes his due. I still don't know if I saved my brother or delivered him, but sometimes at night I hear something climbing up the side of my house, and when I look into the dark, I swear it's him. Would you take the risk to save family, even if it meant bringing something else back with them? Let the flames know in the comments. The blood in the jar. When I was a kid, my dad kept a glass jar in the freezer. He said it was deer's blood for hunting season, but it didn't look like deer blood. It was thicker, darker. It had this strange shimmer in the light, like oil and water. I wasn't supposed to touch it. So, of course, one night when my parents were out, I did. The lid was sealed with wax, but it broke easily. A cold mist rolled out when I opened it, even though the jar had been in the freezer for years. And the smell, not rotten, not metallic, more like wet earth after lightning. It made my teeth ache. I spilled a little on the counter, just a drop. It hissed, then it slid, not dripped, slid toward the edge and fell to the floor. Where it landed, a black stain spread out in a perfect circle, and in the center, something blinked. A week later, my dad caught me looking at it again. He didn't yell. He just knelt down, took the jar, and said, "If the wrong blood gets out, it remembers the one who freed it." 2 days later, the jar was gone. My dad said he buried it somewhere deep in the woods. That was 20 years ago. And last week, I found it on my porch, still cold, still sealed, and my name carved into the lid. If you found a jar like that on your doorstep, would you open it? Or burn it? The fire is listening. The wrong donor. I used to volunteer at blood drives. It felt like a small way to help, and honestly, I liked the free snacks afterward. One day, a mobile donation van showed up in the parking lot of the strip mall near my apartment. It wasn't one of the regular Red Cross units, no logos I recognized. The sign just said, "Blood for those who need it most." Inside it was dim. No windows. The nurse, if that's what she was, didn't ask for my ID. She just smiled too wide, took my arm, and said my veins were perfect. The process felt wrong. The needle was colder than it should have been, and instead of draining into a bag, my blood went into a tall glass container, like a jar. The liquid inside wasn't just red, it shimmered like gasoline. When it was done, she sealed it with black wax and marked the lid with something sharp. Not letters, symbols. Then she set it on a metal shelf alongside dozens of others. I asked where my blood was going. She leaned close and whispered, "Some of it will feed, some of it will fight, but yours will call." I left without my free cookies. That night, I dreamed of a river running uphill, made entirely of blood. On the shore, hundreds of jars bobbed in the current. One broke open. Something with pale hands and a mouth like a spiral climbed out. It looked straight at me and smiled. When I woke up, there was a jar on my nightstand, still warm, half empty. If someone took your blood and you found it waiting for you later, would you pour it out or drink it? The fire wants to know. The offering they didn't ask for. When I moved into the old boarding house, the landlord told me only one rule mattered. Every full moon, leave an offering in the hallway. I thought he meant money for cleaning or some weird tenant tradition. But the night of my first full moon, I saw what the others left. Small dishes of meat, jars of milk, pieces of fruit, all sitting neatly outside their doors. Not wanting to look rude, I put out what I had, a paper cup of cheap red wine. The next morning, my cup was empty, but it wasn't dry. Something had licked it clean. The next month, I forgot. That night, something knocked on my door, slow, patient knocks that lasted for hours. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of a pale figure crouched at the foot of my bed, its mouth split to the ears, drooling. The day after, the landlord came by and handed me a list. It had every tenant's name except mine. Beside mine, written in red, were the words, "Miss the moon." I didn't want to miss again. So for the next full moon, I bought fresh meat from the butcher. But when I set it out, the landlord appeared and shook his head. "Wrong offering," he said. "It won't take that." I asked what it would take. He just pointed at my arm. That night, I cut my palm, filled a shallow bowl with my own blood, left it in the hallway. In the morning, the bowl was gone, and there was a message scratched into my door. Perfect. Now, every month, I give it a little more, because I've seen what happens to the ones who run out of blood. If a place you lived demanded an offering of blood, would you give it, or would you risk what comes to collect? The fire's waiting for your answer. They thought they had followed the ritual. They thought the offering was right, but when the wrong blood spills, the right thing never comes, and the fire remembers every drop. But before the embers die out, there's another story the fire still whispers, of those who dared to break the very vows they made in blood. They thought ending the pact would save them. Instead, it opened the door to something far worse. You'll hear the names they tried to erase, and what came to collect them. Click the video on your screen to hear Campfire Invocations. The pact was never meant to be broken. And find out why some promises burn forever. If the flames spoke to you tonight, leave a comment. Let the fire know you were here by liking the video. And if you want to hear what the flames remember next, subscribe and take your place by the flames before the fire fades.